This is Remote Ruby.
Have you any remote idea to the meaning of the word?
New year, new me.
Yeah, right? How's it going?
That's not true at all. I'm the same moron from 2020, just worse.
That's funny. I don't know. It's 2021's making for a crazy year so far, in the US at least.
I mean, what? I don't know.
It is.
What do we expect? Like
Right.
a few extra days would just turn everything better.
Yeah, it's been quite a time. So who knows what'll happen, but I've been like having a lot of fun playing with Hotwire, and just before we record this, I published Jumpstart's update to use that by default, and that was some fun times. But what I didn't want was them to drop it right before Christmas and then have to like scramble to do a screencast right then. That was exhausting. But
yeah, Hotwire is still on my list. Like, I feel like when Hotwire came out, we spent the whole day together. And then I haven't really touched it since, because I have a StimulusReflex course to finish. And
how's that coming, by the way?
It's good. I think I have 3 or 4 modules left. And now I'm kind of in the stuff that I really like, which is cable ready. Like cable ready is the bread and butter of whether you use Hotwire or StimulusReflex. Like cable ready is there to help you. I'm excited to talk about that. And then I'm just excited to like actually have finished something. So it's a big.
Yeah, that'll be really good. It's still available to purchase, right? As early access, but it'll be nice to have it officially finished and launched and all that.
Yeah, it's coming along good.
How long do you think it'll be to finish it all?
Probably a few weeks. So hopefully by the time this airs, he'll be
That's
ready.
your deadline now. You've committed publicly.
That, or I'm just going to delete the first 10 minutes of this episode the night before. But how are you? You've been putting out content thanks to Hotwire. You've been updating Jumpstart thanks to Hotwire. How are things?
It's good. Mostly working on Hotwire, a little bit of like dealing with some Webpacker changes because surprise, surprise, it's completely changed again for version 6. CSS was in there when we did the Tailwind upgrade not that long ago, but now it's been removed before 6 comes out. You know, just this joys maintaining things and maintenance and whatever. But yeah, doing pretty good. Just doing screencasts and just getting back into speed. I slowed down so much over the holidays and didn't really do any work. And it's taken a little bit of time to like get back up to speed and, you know, running at full pace again. So it's been good. It feels like it's been a while since we've chatted on a podcast because we recorded a bit extra and finally catching up. Yeah,
it was weird not talking last week. And it's weird not having Andrew here today. So his loss. Well, today we have a guest on the show with us. Tobias, do you mind introducing yourself?
Yeah, sure. So I work as a Rails developer for, I think, 12 years now. So I started with Rails 2.2. So that's basically my whole working life. And I'm working for a small German company, not so small these days, I guess, but called Makandra. And yeah, I'm basically doing Rails development and a bit of JavaScript, TypeScript, React kind of stuff. And I also am responsible for one product of Makandra, which is called Rails LTS, which I guess is the reason why I'm here today. Yeah, and when I'm not coding, I'm just a regular nerd, I'd say.
That's great. How long have you been at Makandra?
I think it's almost 13 years now.
Oh, wow. The whole time? Dang.
Yeah, I was the first employee, actually.
Oh, wow. That's cool. So how big are you now? Because I always come across your Makandra cards, blog posts and things all the time.
Yeah, I come across of it as well. So it's always funny if you Google something and then you land back on your own website. I'm not 100% sure. I think I was like 20, 25 persons. So I think 20 developers roughly and operations guys. So we're doing hosting and development.
That is cool. So you guys are primarily a consulting company, but you have some products like Rails LTS?
Yeah, exactly. So we have a lot of different customers of all sizes. And yeah, consultancy is a good word for it. And Rails LTS is mostly our only product, I guess.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's what I was just going to ask. So Rails LTS has been around for how long? I feel like it's been quite a while now.
Yeah, I think we're coming out on our 8th anniversary. I think so. It was in 2013.
Wow. Okay. Maybe you can explain the idea behind it and why you guys created it and what it does for people.
Yeah, so Rails LTS is simply back in the day when the Rails core team released Rails 3, and then at some point later they dropped support for Rails 2. And this was like a big thing because upgrading from Rails 2 to Rails 3 was hard. And so the idea was to provide a service where people could just keep their applications running on Rails 2, but have them secured against all known vulnerabilities in Rails. Because obviously running on an unmaintained version of Rails is a bad idea for your data. And so actually this whole thing started off. So we needed it for ourselves because we had like about perhaps 40 or so applications running in productions for various clients. And a lot of those were in Rails 2. And we didn't feel like updating all of them at once. And so we simply forked Rails. And so that's how it started. So we had a fork of Rails on GitHub where we patched against the security vulnerabilities. And yeah, that's how it started off. And then in 2013, a guy called Patrick McKenzie, he basically tweeted and asked if someone was willing to maintain Rails 2 for him for money. And we felt, yeah, we actually could do that. And we hashed it out with him. And that's how Rails LTS got started. And so he was our first customer. And he wrote a very nice blog post about it, which got us our other customers in the beginning. And yeah, went on from there. And what it does is, so simply it's a service, you can subscribe to it and you get access to a custom gem server. And then you put that gem server into your gem file, you say Rails update, and then you're running on a version of Rails without security issues. And it's hopefully in the vast majority of cases should be a drop-in replacement. So your code should just work but be secure now.
I remember Patio 11 talking about Rails LTS back then. So that's probably where I first heard about it because I followed him for a long time. That is funny. It seems like it's amazing that you're able to do it with pretty much no changes to the code because sometimes the security fixes are something where you do have to change the way you do things. Like, I don't know, the first thing that comes to mind is like the OAuth process. I know OmniAuth has got a library, or the new version is going to make you do a post request so that it's a secure redirect or whatever. So it's pretty impressive to go and do all those security updates, especially when like things are changing all the time in Rack and all these dependencies. Is it hard to maintain all that stuff or even just keep an eye on the security vulnerabilities? Can you like monitor the newer versions of Rails, or are those not necessarily relevant anymore to the older Rails?
No, we do monitor it, but we just basically monitoring the vulnerabilities is just following the Rails security mailing list, right? Where the Rails core team posts about new vulnerabilities. And usually these are the vulnerabilities that we then have to check, do they apply to all the versions of Rails? And these days we not only maintain Rails 2, but there's also a version Rails 3 and for Rails 4 LTS. And yeah, we basically backport these patches. And I feel like Rails has been pretty good in making the security changes in ways that people do not have to change their code. But in cases where people we have our own mailing list and we will inform our customers that maybe they have to check something in the application where there's something that is a vulnerability, but we can't fix it for them. That might happen, but this is very rare. So usually you can do it in a way that keeps the old code running. But we pay a lot of attention to that because I think so the people who use our service are people who don't really want to have to make changes to the app, obviously, otherwise they would just upgrade. So it's a big priority to not break stuff.
Yeah, that makes sense because every time you go through an upgrade of anything, there's always little side effects here and there. And just like I was mentioning earlier with Webpacker, like that one's one that's constantly thrashing its configs and whatever, that trying to update that and always be up to date is not an easy process, and it like often breaks other things. I upgraded that and then CSS breaks, and it is not fun. So will you, I guess pretty soon, I'm assuming that Rails 5.2 will end up being a new Rails LTS version that you'll maintain?
Yeah, probably. But I think it's going to be a while because the security, the way it works in Rails is they keep maintaining the last minor version of the second to last major version. So when Rails 7 releases, Rails 5.2 will go out of maintenance, and I assume that's going to be a while.
Yeah, that would be probably quite a while. It's been fairly slow between releases and even minor versions of Rails lately. So yeah, hopefully that won't be a while for you.
Always new customers, so it's fine.
Yeah. So with a lot of these things, you've got old Rails apps, and for fun, a while ago on a weekend, I installed Rails 1.0 just completely for fun to see what it was like.
Done that. Okay.
And that was like one of those things where, okay, I have to go back to some really old Postgres gem and basically go find what were all the latest versions of the gems at the time to use those. Do you have to like regularly fork other things around Rails to support the older apps in order to like maintain those too?
It's been very rare, fortunately. There have been some cases where there were things, I remember 2 years ago, there were things if you did your session storage in Active Record, there was a vulnerability there, and this was part of Rails in Rails like 2 and 3, and it has been a gem in Rails 4. And so in this case, what we did, we just did the fix in our version of LTS, and then we just forked the gem on GitHub and did the fix there. But this has fortunately be very rare. The other thing is rec. So LTS is not compatible with new versions of rec because it's very tightly coupled. But we are not aware of any serious security vulnerabilities in the versions we can support. So that has been fine. But the day will come when we have to do something about rec, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, probably. Hopefully it's not too soon. Maybe it'll be around the Rails 7 release or something, but
we'll see.
Yeah. And then I guess a related thing here is obviously people running old apps are also running old Ruby versions too. Do you have to, because eventually those go out of date and don't get security patches. Are you also maintaining those, or how does that work?
We don't maintain Ruby versions because we don't feel we have the expertise for that. But so we are Ruby developers and not C developers. But what we have done is we made sure that Rails LTS can run on current Ruby versions. So when I say currently can run on Rails 2.5, and we'll be dropping Ruby 2.7 support in the coming weeks. So if they feel like they have to go to a maintained version of Ruby as well, they can definitely do it with LTS, but it will obviously require manual work. So it cannot be a drop-in replacement because people's applications code will simply be not compatible with new Rubies. But it's doable. So a lot of our own applications, we actually haven't upgraded Rails, but we have upgraded Ruby.
That's pretty cool.
And I think currently it's going to be quite a big issue because we are hosting most of our stuff on like Ubuntu. And it turns out that on Ubuntu, I think starting with 2004, it's pretty hard to get Rails Ruby, anything below Ruby, and including Ruby 2.3 even installed. So it's getting difficult. So I think at some point, we'll have to do something about that as well.
Yeah, but it's nice though if you can get your app compatible with 2.5, and then you're pretty recent at least for a lot of that stuff, which is really nice.
Yeah, I feel like there are not that many, perhaps I should say that out loud, but I don't feel like there are many vulnerabilities in Ruby itself that are relevant to a Rails app. So most of the vulnerabilities are stuff like, okay, so you're using OpenSSL in some weird way, and then you might run into a problem. But Rails is doing that stuff for you, and it's not usually an issue within Rails.
Yeah, I can see that. Yeah, maybe it's probably more often somebody copied something from Stack Overflow that said, make this request, but ignore SSL and does something bad there. Because you don't really see too many things drop for security versions in Ruby for quite a while, really.
Yeah, I would say.
It's been here and there.
And it's mostly, it's stuff like, okay, so if you're using $safe, it's not doing the right thing always, but you're not going to do this in a Rails app. So it's mostly not that relevant. But one big upside of updating Ruby is obviously it's much faster. So it turns out a Rails 2 app running on a modern Ruby is pretty fast.
Oh, really? That's pretty cool. So it's a side benefit that you get is your app just ends up being faster.
Yeah, because these old apps, they feel so slow, but it's mostly Ruby. And actually, I think Rails 2 is probably significantly faster than Rails 3. I think they improved this back again in newer Rails versions, but Rails 2 on Ruby is good.
You said Rails 2 was faster than Rails 3?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
Because Rails 3 is when they did the MERB merge. So I wonder...
Exactly. Which is why upgrading to Rails 3 is so hard, because they refactored everything. And I think what happened is that the stack level got so deep, they added all these middlewares and all that stuff, and it wasn't really that fast. But it's much better now in new Rails versions.
That's such a cool fact to know that if you run an older version of Rails, a new version of Ruby, it's just fast. That's cool.
Yeah, you're going to start running Rails 1.0 in production for the speed.
Oh, I hope not.
I'm going to go back and try and get all those gems that used to be in there, like access list and all that. Consider my days with Webpacker and Rails 6 done.
You're going to end up doing Rails 1.0 with Webpacker 6 in the same app.
Remember the time before there was even an asset pipeline?
Yeah.
Where your assets lived in /public.
Yeah, I remember that. And you had the config where you put your gems instead of your gem file before Bundler existed. I guess you probably have some apps, but you probably upgrade those to use Bundler, don't you?
Yeah, you actually have to use Bundler for, well, technically you could use LTS without Bundler, but it's not recommended.
Yeah, and I guess it makes it easy to use Bundler to use your gem server and you can authenticate and all that automatically. So that would make perfect sense. Yeah, this is super cool. Like for a lot of consulting that I've done in the past, the client never would want to pay to upgrade from an old version of Rails. They're like, the app works fine and that's all I want. And so it's a nice way to continue that running and keeping it safe and all of those things. Do you have, as a company that offers this and also develops stuff, I imagine that you also help upgrade people from Rails LTS eventually to a new version if they want to make that investment?
Yeah, definitely. We have done it a couple of times in the past, but actually not as often as you would think. I think most people who are using LTS are using it for software that's just done. So it's feature complete and there's no real reason to upgrade Rails. But if you like have an application that you're doing active development on, so features are added there regularly, then I wouldn't recommend using LTS except perhaps as a stopgap measure. So if you keep developing it, then by all means upgrade to Rails. Yeah, so we're doing some Rails upgrade work, but it turns out it's quite hard to make a good business case for it because it's not technically that difficult to upgrade. So we probably have the expertise for that. But if people come to you and ask you, so can you upgrade my Rails and how much will it cost? And even that question is so hard to answer because every app is so different and you don't have the domain knowledge and all that stuff. And maybe that test suite is bad and you don't know. And so even to get to a point where you even can give them a number, a lot of work. We kept away from that a bit.
Yeah, I can see that. It's just it's a cost. And then what are the benefits we get out of doing the upgrade? You get some, using Ruby 3 versus 2.5 or 2.7 is like not a giant improvement yet or whatever. And doing the same for Rails, same thing.
I think if you keep developing your app, you may run into a point where, I don't know, you can't use the cool gem you want to use because it's not compatible and stuff like that. So I think at least for developer happiness, they upgrade. Yeah, but if the app is done, just running, and you just want to keep it running safely, why not use something like that? Yes.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I've definitely run into that on some old projects that I haven't touched in 4 years. And I'm like, I want to add action text or something to it. And I have to upgrade to do that. But it always ends up very quickly in the weeds of tweaking configs and other things to make it compatible with the new defaults. And very quickly, I've spent quite a few hours upgrading this app just for this one feature. And I'm like, did I really need to do that? Probably not.
Yeah, I can totally see that.
Jason, you have any questions that you want to dig into on Rails LTS?
I'm trying to think. I don't have a ton. kind of just enjoying listening to you tell me all about these older Rails versions that I wasn't here for. So
Yeah, I enjoy that too. I remember the days of 2.3, but only like very briefly, because that's when I joined Rails, and then 3 came out, and it's pretty much always building stuff with the new version at that point, especially as a new developer where you're just building new apps all the time. You like don't ever play with the old versions. But I feel like especially if you're consulting, you end up helping people with their old app. They eventually are asking for like, hey, can we add this new feature that we haven't really touched this app for 4 years? And then you're like, okay, but this is quite different from what I remember.
Yeah, we definitely prefer working on our own, just developing new projects for customers and using Rails 6 and Webpacker and all the good stuff. That's much better.
Without you having to like divulge all your company information, do you have a significant amount of people that still come in like with these projects to be supported?
No, not really. So Rails LTS is mostly self-service anyway. We do some support, but people just buy the product and use it. So I don't really know what they actually do. We have some requests, but as I said, we're not really looking for customers for Rails upgrades. So our work is split to like 20, perhaps 30% helping people on their apps. And the rest is just customers coming to us with an idea, and they just need an application, and we just happen to write it in Rails, and we just develop software. That's the majority of our work, I would say.
Cool. Yeah, I was curious. At one of my previous jobs, we ran a Rails 2.03 app, and like the version of Ruby we were on, we had patched ourselves. Yeah, it was an enterprise edition of Ruby, and I was just thinking, if we had an LTS of that, I wonder how it would have been. So outside of Rails LTS, what is your history? When did you get started in Rails?
I studied maths, funnily enough, and didn't even expect to become a software developer. And then there was this one guy I knew at university, and I think he used to be a Perl developer at the time, but I believe I showed him Ruby back in the day. And so it turned out he has started a company, which turned out to be Makandra. And he asked me if I wanted to work for him.
Oh, wow.
And I said yes. And I expected to do this for a year or so. And then do the math stuff that I intended to do. And just, I kept doing it. Yeah, and that was quite good because as in a small company that's still growing. So things are changing quite fast. And you see a lot of different projects. I think I couldn't work on one single application for 10 years. That would be horrible to me. But we don't do that. So we have a lot of different customers and a lot of different applications over the years. And so while we keep maintaining all the old stuff, we are working on new stuff a decent amount. That's quite good. You
have a balance of older stuff that you maintain, but you're still getting to write new apps. It's not
like definitely. I think it would be difficult to keep all my coworkers happy if they have to only maintain legacy stuff all day. I think that's not a sustainable way to do this.
Making them all COBOL developers.
we have one developer with a COBOL background, actually.
That's awesome.
My next question was actually, do y'all do any other work other than like Ruby and Rails? Do you take on any COBOL work?
I mean, I could ask, but I think the answer would be no. We are quite happy with Ruby. I mean, we haven't really branched out that much, so we tried to for a while. We thought we might branch off to doing a bit of Elixir and Phoenix for a while, but then we evaluated it and found out, so while this is a really cool language and a really cool framework, compared to what you have in Rails with the super mature framework with all this big ecosystem of stuff you can just use. And it's such a huge investment, not even just learning the new stuff, but losing all the stuff you know about Rails, that it didn't really happen. And I think these days, so I'm personally interested in, so I've been looking a bit at more like front-end frameworks and maybe using Node with TypeScript or something, so you can have the same language on the back end and the front end. Since this enables some cool stuff where you can do hydration, you can server-side rendering and then hydrate that stuff, and then the front end takes over and stuff like that, which is simply not possible in Ruby. But that's just a dream right now, so I have no idea if that leads to anything.
There's definitely something to be said when you're talking about you have a lot of investment in Ruby, Ruby. That's always kind of my struggle is I have 3 or 4 Elixir books on my shelf. And like every time I start them, I'm like, this is such a cool language. And then I'm like, I just really know this language, Ruby. So like I just slowly eke back to just doing what I know, which I need to get out of my comfort zone. But at the same time, I'm so productive in it. It's hard to argue for me not working in it.
Yeah, that's exactly the issue. But the risk is, as Chris said, there has not been that much development in Rails itself. And it's true, it's super mature, but I don't know, the hot new stuff is mostly not happening in Rails, I would say.
Even the new magic is all JavaScript stuff. It's like Rails is still exactly the same. It's just, here's some new stuff you can do on top of it. Yeah, I imagine we're not going to see anything major on the back end because MVC's worked pretty well for quite some time. And there's been some nice little things of like file uploading is built in and rich text and whatever. Those are not bad, but they're nothing major. Like here's a blog in 15 minutes. We're not getting another version of that, like a blog in a minute or something. But
and then there's something like Phoenix where, okay, you have suddenly your response time is in the microseconds. And I mean, that's cool. You're not going to get that in Rails. But on the other hand, do you really need it? And you lose so much productivity, as Jason said. Yeah, it's a bit of a struggle there. But all in all, we are still pretty content with Rails, I would say.
Yeah, that's good. I think there's still the occasional question of, should I even bother learning Ruby on Rails these days? And it's good to see the excitement because of the Hotwire, new magic and whatever. There's nothing super exciting. It's just really productive. And that's a really valuable reason to learn it and to invest in it. Because I think that's like you guys, that's my reason for staying is it's just so productive. And I know that if I go to Node or something, I end up rewriting a lot of Rails stuff or like duct taping things together to build something that works like Rails. And then like, why didn't I just use Rails at that point? So it's not quite the same philosophy in a lot of other languages, I think.
And there's something to be said of that it doesn't change that fast. So, I mean, the Node world is the other extreme where everything changes every day. And just to get testing, you have to couple together 5 different frameworks. And in Rails, it just is there out of the box.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of Linux distros and their different approaches. Everybody talks about if you use Debian, they kind of refuse to upgrade any versions and whatever. And then Ubuntu will happily upgrade stuff every new release, and the same philosophies of we're going to keep doing what we're doing and we don't need to make major changes. There's the new stuff in Ruby has been around like, how do we make it faster, which is great, but it's not really changing any existing stuff and forcing you to rewrite it. And that's good. I think that's a good thing.
I'm curious how the new type definition thing in Rails 3 will work, or if this is actually going to change anything.
I'll be curious to see that too. I know that I see like a lot more people using TypeScript in JavaScript, and that's what they rewrote TurboLinks to use and Hotwire stuff. And I imagine that will make a lot of sense to eventually bring into definitely like a framework level, because it would be really nice to be able to have those more descriptive errors when people do something weird, like you give a method the wrong type and it will be able to tell you exactly what you did wrong other than called undefined method on whatever. And I think those will be really good improvements to have built into libraries and frameworks.
TypeScript works amazing though. It's surprising how well it works with this everything goes JavaScript world, and that is still is useful there. What I'm hesitant about in the Ruby free solution is just the fact that you have to have a separate file for your type annotations. Just reminds me of header files in C, and I didn't like those very much. I'll try to keep my mind open for that.
That's one of the things about TypeScript that's like always appealed to me is how low the entry level is to start using it, because it just like is a little bit of, it just feels like a little bit of sugar on top of your JavaScript and you have types. Having a separate file that I know can be auto-generated, but you have to keep in sync, things like that. That's, I don't know. I'm really interested because I want it, but I don't know if I want it that bad.
Yeah, exactly my feeling. Yeah.
Cool. Any place online or any links you'd like us to share? Tell people where they can find you.
Yeah, it's basically RailsLTS.com. That has all the information. Yeah, that's it.
Awesome. Thank you so much for taking the time to sit down and chat with us today.
Yeah, sure. It was a pleasure. Thank you, guys.
Yeah. Thanks for all the work you do for the Rails community. I think this is one of those things that happens because we have a mature framework and community. Like people are able to help you at any stage of where you're at, which is amazing because there's so many old Rails 2.3 and 3 and 4.2 apps out there. I'm sure I have a ton of them on my GitHub. So having services like this is just really awesome to have. So just wanted to say thanks for what you guys are doing.
Yeah, sure. Thank you.
All right, Chris, hopefully we'll be back full house next week. And if we're not, then somebody's really missing out. All right.
Cool. See ya.